So, my fiancé took up cooking during quarantine. We used to cook little and instead ate a lot out of the house. We could afford it and tended to eat healthy. Of course, we can both cook, but given our busy schedule, it was easier to eat out. Also, to be honest, I don't really like cooking and consider it a chore to be avoided. I love food, but there are other things that I would rather do in my own time. Due to quarantine, my fiancé has decided to cook more and has found that she enjoys it a lot. This is great. I am happy for her that she has discovered something new that brings her joy. Turns out she's pretty good at it too, and she cares about learning new skills, etc., so I benefited too. I still don't really like cooking myself, as I said, so in exchange for her putting all that effort into cooking, I help her out by paying for takeout in the evenings when she doesn't feel like cooking, and also I do everything else, wash the dishes, clean the table, etc. on the days she cooks. To the best of my knowledge, she agreed that this was an appropriate compromise, and of course, if she felt it was unfair, I would be happy to fill the gap in other ways. But she seemed to enjoy it. As her culinary experiments expanded into baking and became more complex overall, she began to involve me in cooking. I would go into the kitchen to have a drink and check it out, and she would say, "Oh, could you help me chop this while I fry this?" Or something like that. I cut carrots for her or something like that, chatted with her about food, and then went back to my business. I didn't mind it at all. But gradually I became her sous chef, especially when she wants to cook food together. Keep in mind that her culinary experiments are complex and sometimes take 2 or more hours. So my whole evening goes into these culinary endeavors, and it happens several times a week. On top of that, she tends to boss me around in the kitchen and can be a little rude. As you can probably guess, we got into a fight over this. I told her that I don't like her attitude in the kitchen when I help, and I don't like to cook in general. I would feel better helping her if she wasn't so rude to me. But honestly, I don't want to spend 8+ hours every week cooking. It's not my hobby, it's hers. If she wanted me to take part in cooking, I bought everything or cooked something simple. She was very upset. She said it was unfair, that I was enjoying the fruits of her labor but not doing my part. And that cooking took 2 hours and dishwashing / cleaning only half an hour. I told her that it was her decision to cook very complex dishes and that I would be happy if she made a simple pizza or roast. After a certain point, the sophistication of her dishes moves into hobby territory. And I resent being made to feel like a bad partner because I don't want to spend a few evenings on her hobby. We haven't really worked it out. I actually bought / cooked my own food a few times so I didn't enjoy the fruits of her labor. But that seemed to upset her even more, and our refrigerator started to fill up with more leftover food than she could eat herself. Another time I helped her but told her I had to go on video chat at 8 p.m. and she got upset when I actually stopped helping, and left even though I told her beforehand. I'm afraid I told her somewhat caustically that I was not her sous chef to command the kitchen. I tried to discuss it with her again when we felt calmer. I told her that I liked that she found a new hobby. But it's her hobby and I can't help it and don't want to feel obligated to do it. She countered that it was not feminist of me to put the cooking on her and benefit from it without helping her. The feminist connection doesn't make much sense to me because neither of us used to cook much. And she decided to take up cooking herself, but of course I didn't tell her that. I told her that if she wanted to discuss the division of labor in our household, we could do so and come up with something new that reflected the fact that she now cooks more. We tried to do this, but she wanted to count all the time she spends cooking as time around the house. So, according to her ideal distribution of housework, she spends over 10 hours cooking just dinner each week, which somehow leaves me with almost all other chores around the house. I told her I didn't like it because cooking complicated meals is a hobby. It's not fair to say that 6 / 10 hours of her housework is actually her hobby, and I have to do the equivalent amount of real housework, if that makes sense. So we are in a bit of an impasse. Am I really a bad feminist? I don't think I'm wrong. I'm very familiar with emotional labor, mental stress, and all that, but I may be wrong. I love this woman and obviously want to marry her. But we are usually good at making logical decisions, and this is the first time we have had such a disagreement. I don't know how to get her to understand the line between cooking as a necessary activity and cooking as a hobby. P.S. The fiancé has taken up cooking gourmet meals as a hobby. But now it becomes my responsibility to help out and do more housework that I don't think I should. I am a 36 years old female, and I have always been into jewelry. I used to own a variety of jewelry sets, but due to unfortunate circumstances, most of them had to go so I could afford rent after I lost my job. My husband never got lucky to land a job since 2013. Thankfully now I have a stable job that gets us by from month to month. I also kept one set of jewelry which is the most valuable whether momentarily and / or sentimentally, since it's part of family heirloom. The set includes a pair of earrings, a bracelet and a necklace. All gold material, and again they are worth decent amount of money. My brother-in-law has been with then-girlfriend for 10 years and they recently got married. It was a huge deal for the family. My husband wanted to get them a decent wedding gift and tried borrowing money from friends and neighbors but got turned down. He kept stressing out about it for weeks, and just the other day, the wedding was days prior and the groom and bride are off to their honeymoon, I discovered that my jewelry set was gone. I freaked after my husband nonchalantly said he gifted it to his brother's wife as a wedding gift. I was fuming. I asked how could he, and he replied that he had no money and nothing of value to give the newlyweds, and besides that set has been sitting in the closet since July 2019 and I never wore any piece of it, so he figured I'd forgotten about it, but he said he'll figure a way to pay me, or get me a similar one once he starts working, but I very loudly told him absolutely not and gave him 3 days. Just 3 days to return the set or I'll stop paying for everything in the apartment. He looked puzzled like he couldn't believe I was serious. He said he doesn't want to cause an issue, but I said it's already there, and if he doesn't want issues all he has to do is contact his brother or his wife and retrieve the set or go get it himself. He tried to twist the argument and offer the same solutions as mentioned above, but I refused. I said I just want my set back and he has 3 days only. He kept talking about how tasteless and disrespectful it'd be for him to retrieve a wedding gift, and said this will damage his relationship with his brother and family, and also how impossible it was to retrieve the set in 3 days, when the couple are on their honeymoon in another country. He said I was financially abusing him by threatening to stop paying for anything knowing I'm the breadwinner. Also, he refused to give me their new contact info to retrieve the set myself. I am a 35 years old female. I don't have the best relationship with my husband's mom. Since day one she tried to make remarks and compare me to her. She then tried to get on my good side and started overly praising everything I do and sometimes even copying me, like that one time when she dyed her hair purple just like mine, and when everyone pointed out how ridiculous she looked, she actually blamed me and accused me of trying to make a joke out of her. So, anyways, my husband and I took 2 weeks off work to go visit some places out of the country, tourism in other words. Thing is, I was the one who saved up for and arranged for the trip. My husband was responsible for booking the tickets. My husband's mom wanted to come along and threw temper tantrums when I said no. She called, texted, sent people to talk to me into letting her come. Even threatened to call the police and make some complaint up to get us to stay if she can't come. My husband said we should just take her, but I told him he was wrong to tell her about the trip in the first place. He gave me an ultimatum. Said he wouldn't go if she can't come, and I told him I'd gladly call his bluff, which made him take his words back and say, fine. I will tell her to stop it because we won't take her. Things got quieter, suspiciously quieter. The day of the trip came and we got to the airport at 2 p.m. My husband was walking ahead of me and was looking left and right like he was looking for someone. I asked him, but he didn't respond. He led me to the waiting area, and first thing I saw was his mom standing there with her luggage. I froze in my spot. I felt a cold wave washing over me and I was fuming inside. She and my husband were hugging. That's when I quietly turned around and started walking towards the exit. My husband followed me while shouting at me to stop. He tried to stop me, but I told him off the harshest way possible. He tried to say I was overreacting and that his mom was there anyway and I should let it go and not mess the trip up for us. I told him he and his mom could still go and that I was going home. I went home and sobbed into my dog's fur for several minutes. Turned out he booked her a ticket without me knowing. An hour later he came home yelling and raging about how pathetic and spiteful I was to walk out and go home and ruin the trip last minute. I told him he caused this to happen. He said that I was being so hard on his mom, it's ridiculous. I refused to fight anymore, but he kept on berating me, then called my family to tell them that the trip was cancelled, and that it was because of me. My family said that I shouldn't have ruined it for myself and should have sucked it up and done my best to enjoy. My sister-in-law and I have an agreement. She watches my kids 3 days a week, and I watch hers 3 days a week. This agreement has stood since March 2020 without issues. Any changes have been discussed weeks in advance. A couple weeks ago, we had an argument. The next day, I brought my kids to her house, dropped them off, and left. I didn't speak to my sister-in-law, because when one of us is in a rush, like I was, it's standard for us to just let the kids out, stay in the car, and drive off when you see the door open. I drove to work, about 40 minutes away. When I got there, I had about 20 missed calls, and even more texts, all from my sister-in-law, all saying she didn't want to watch the kids given our argument. Her first text arrived a little before I got to her place, but I didn't see it until I got to work because my phone is always on silent when I drive. I rang her, said I'll arrange to work from home, then come get the kids. She said I have 45 minutes to get back to her place or she would call the police. I told my supervisor the situation, and she said I could leave after I did a few things. This delayed me 20 minutes. When I got back to my sister-in-law's, just over an hour later, she said she'd already called the police when the 45 minutes ran out. I then had to stick around long enough to tell the officer that I didn't abandon my children, there was just a communication issue. Sister-in-law and I had another shouting match later over this. I arranged other childcare for my kids and I've been mostly ignoring her since. However, she reached out and apologized, and has asked if I'd be willing to go back to the old childcare arrangement. I work with kids. If I got child abandonment on my record, I would never work in my field again, which she knew. And her calling the police was a massive overreaction, so if she needs a babysitter she can go whistle for all I care. She said that if I checked my phone, talked to her that morning, or came back when I was supposed to, she would not have needed to call the police, and I did this to myself. As she gave me a warning with that first text, and I could have checked my phone or spoken to her directly when I got to her place. All of which she says she would have done if she were in my position, given that we'd argued the night before. I've told her that if she thinks I'm babysitting for her, she's delusional, and she's on her own. Because of my refusal, it's looking like she may have to quit her job because my brother and her would pay more for a babysitter than they would earn from her working. My mother and brother have both called me an arsehole because there were no consequences to her calling the police, and that while she overreacted, she's apologized, so if I really forgive her, I'll let us move on. This income loss would also mean that she, my brother, and my niece and nephew might need to move somewhere cheaper. That my brother might have to take on extra hours at work. And in an extreme scenario they may even be completely unable to live independently, meaning they'd have to move in with her parents, who live several hours away.